The day for Mokran to leave comes soon. She bids goodbye to her friends. She then approaches her father, but doesn't find Axel by his side. She had hoped to see him before leaving. Ivan wishes her health and happiness, assuring her that Axel will come around. The scene switches to 4 days later. They were still at sea, and it's been a journey full of strange new experiences. But she was having fun, and wondered what sort of world awaited her beyond the horizon. The next day, they finally reach Ethan's village. As Mokran sees the Gui Heel tribe's home, she is amazed. As soon as she steps out of the boat, Freya happily greets her, addressing her as her daughter-in-law. She lifts Mokran up and cuddles her fondly. Mokran realizes that it must be her whom Ethan takes after. Ethan then introduces his family to Mokran. He introduces his father and 3 sisters, Halia, Suri, and Haviva. They all look at Mokran in amazement. His father seemed kind to her, and his sisters seemed sweet. Haviva hands her a mouse as a gift, making her shriek in fear. Other tribesmen gathered to see the new bride and asked Ethan if she was the one. On the other hand, Mokran is traumatized to see the tribesmen looking at her, making her feel uncomfortable. Suddenly, someone smacks Ethan on the head and tells him not to let his guard down, despite getting himself a girl. It was Ethan's childhood friend, Diane. They then playfully start to fight, but Mokran thinks otherwise. She tries stopping them, but when she finds Ethan's forehead bleeding, she shudders in fear and wonders if she will be okay in this village. The scene switches to the wedding day. Mokran is dressed up as a bride. She spots Ethan and takes the moment in. She is really going to be his wife. After this, they soon get married and seal their marriage with a kiss. That night, Mokran happily awaited their first night together, as Ethan had told her that the Gui Heel tribe newlyweds commemorate their first night together in a special way. She excitedly wonders what sort of unique delicacies they have in store. Ethan gulps down the alcohol and promises to do his best tonight. This confuses Mokran. As Ethan makes intimate advances at her, she pulls away from him. This confuses him, and he asks what the matter is. She glares at him and asks what's the matter with him. Confused, Ethan reminds her that she wanted every night to be a wedding night for a month straight. Mokran agrees, but what she means is the food. A sudden realization dawns on them as they realize the misunderstanding between them. Ethan apologizes, saying he didn't know the Cho tribe had such a tradition. She confesses that she's just scared because it's her first time. Surprising Ethan, he apologizes for the misunderstanding and assures her that they can take time to get to know each other. The next morning, she finds Ethan gone. He had left her a note saying he would be waiting for her at the clearing. Since Gui Heel's tribal armor was too heavy, she decided to put on her clothes instead. She then walks out, wondering which way to go. Suddenly, 3 men tower above her, asking if she's Ethan's bride. One tosses her over his shoulder and promises to give her an introduction that she will never forget. This makes Mokran shudder in fear. They throw her in front of other men who gossip about her. She wonders if Ethan knows there's a band of slavers on the mainland who abduct women and sell them to other men. A man loosens her hair tie. She had thought all members of this tribe were like Ethan, but she thought of how wrong she was. Meanwhile, Ethan hears Mokran scream and rushes in that direction. He finds a crowd of men surrounding Mokran. He reminds them of his warning about how delicate and timid the Cho tribe's people are. What really happened was that the person who took her hair tie was just admiring the Cho tribe's craftsmanship, and their previous remarks about her meant something else altogether. They were asking questions about her out of curiosity only. He takes Mokran back. He smells her hair, which makes him flustered. He hugs her from behind and says they must go find a hidden corner safe from prying eyes. But when they rush back home, they find someone begging them for help. Ethan asks Mokran to go inside while he talks. But the woman says she wants to speak to Mokran. Ethan is asked to leave since he is distracting them. He notices the tribal clothes he left for Mokran and wonders why she didn't wear them. Meanwhile, the woman tells Mokran about how the man she loves lives in the Hyun tribe, which is quite like the Cho tribe. Her expression turns glum, and she expresses that he avoids her gaze. She then asks Mokran for ways to win his affection. Mokran asks what sort of things she has been doing for him. The woman reveals that she has been delivering 5 sacks of rice every time she visits. Surprising Mokran, she further reveals that she helped him hunt, split firewood, and remove a giant rock. She then ponders, wondering if it's still not enough. Mokran asks her to stop and not force him to marry her. She then hands her some flowers, saying she needs to try a different approach. A few days later, the woman tells Mokran that they are getting married. The scene switches to a frustrated Ethan as he is unable to get alone time with Mokran due to people constantly seeking Mokran's advice. The next day, she meets a man from the Hyun tribe. He hands her a gift in return for her advice. More people gather to give her gifts as well, making her smile. Meanwhile, Ethan's friend from the Myong tribe informs him how the sea creatures around Danwal Island have been restless lately. His friend suggests solving the issue. but Ethan asks him to leave it to him. He then returns home with a wild boar to surprise Mokran. However, she's petrified to see the dead animal and collapses. Later, Ethan apologizes, but she asks him not to apologize because she is the one who needs to stop reacting to every little thing. She then reveals a letter from her family saying she isn't sure what to write back. Ethan asks to take a look, but Mokran hides the letter behind her, saying it's nothing special. She averts her eyes, knowing she can't let Ethan see it, as persuading Axel is only her responsibility. A few days later, Mokran finds the letter gone. Mokran hurries toward Freya and asks if she has seen Ethan, but she says she hasn't seen him all day, and that he is usually in the mountains around this time. Mokran asks if the village children are learning to read and write. Freya agrees, saying it was Ethan who first proposed early education for their children, and that they started out just a few years ago. All the children gather around Mokran to see her, but Mokran notices one of Ethan's little sisters pouting as she sits alone. Mokran then goes to the mountains to find Ethan but finds the place empty. She suddenly hears a voice and runs in that direction. She spots Ethan and embraces him happily, but to her surprise, it wasn't Ethan. She apologizes for mistaking him for her husband, but the man pulls her towards him and smiles, saying fate brought them here today. He confesses that he has become the slave of her love from now on, and wishes to be together. Mokran freezes in shock and reminds him that she's married. He finally stops as Ethan places a sword on his neck, threatening him to unhand her. The man smirks and cheerfully greets Ethan. Ethan recognizes the man as Leo. Leo says he can't believe he's married, as who could have imagined that Ethan the bedwetter would man up to get himself a wife. Ethan becomes infuriated, and they start bickering. Leo's lieutenant greets Mokran and explains that they both apprenticed under the same master as children. Leo introduces himself as the chieftain of the Haya tribe. He confidently states that his people believe in ruling through inheritance and blood. He asks her to marry him, saying all his wealth and prosperity will be hers. He then asks what she is doing here, reminding Mokran of why she even came here. She informs him that she has lost her letter, and wonders if he knows anything about it. She then shows him a skull, saying she found it in the chest, shocking Ethan. He asks if she must really have found that letter, surprising Mokran. She asks if it was him then, to which he asks if he's a suspect. Now Mokran knows she suspects him, and she turns speechless. He asks if she wants to go home to her family, confusing her. He says she must miss her true family since he could never live up to them. He asks if that isn't why she's looking so hard for that letter. He points out that she's been here for 2 months, but is still reluctant to put on the garments of his tribe. He has also been trying hard to consummate their marriage, but she manages to slip away, saying she doesn't trust him. His words hurt Mokran, and she asks how he could say such a thing. If only he knew what kind of inner battle Mokran had to fight to leave the only home she'd ever known and choose a new life with him. She turns away, asking him to think about what he wants. The scene switches to Ethan, handing her the skull and saying he has an idea where the letter is. As she follows him, she ponders their married days. She thought their marriage problems would naturally be resolved over time without having to sit down and address them. But instead of fading away, they have grown to drive a wedge between them that they can't seem to overcome. Ethan soon leads her toward a house. They spot Halia, one of Ethan's little sisters, with the letter in her hands. This shocks Mokran, and she wonders why she has the letter. Halia rushes away, and Mokran runs after her, asking her to stop. Ethan tries to stop both of them, saying it's dangerous to go up the mountain in this weather, but they continue running, so he rushes after them. Halia keeps running while apologizing. Mokran spots a cliff near where Halia is running and asks her to stop. It was too late, and Halia started to fall. However, Mokran jumps after her and catches her. Halia accidentally lets go of the letter, but Ethan catches it. Unaware of the cliff, he slips, but Mokran catches him by the hand and tries pulling him up, but to no avail. She asks Halia to run to the village and get the elders. Ethan confesses that he wanted the letter gone, since she seemed to cherish it enough to keep it even from him, which made him jealous. Mokran asks him to stop, making it sound as if these are his last words. Ethan's hands start to slip away, and he promises to try expressing himself carefully, asking her not to leave. Tears fill Mokran's eyes, and she asks why she would leave him. She tells him not to let go of her hand. She says she doesn't need that letter and asks him to let it fall and climb back up. This makes Ethan smile, but his hand slips away, causing him to fall. Mokran retreats, calling out for him. Ethan approaches her from the side, surprising her. He explains that with both hands free, climbing back was a breeze. Mokran immediately embraces him and confesses that the letter wasn't what he thought it was. It was from her brother, and she kept it from him because she thought there was still some bad blood between them. Soon they will sit under the tree discussing their feelings. Mokran makes it clear to Ethan that this is her home now. They both promise to be honest about their feelings from now on and embrace each other. They soon return home. Mokran hopes Halia isn't too shaken up, but Ethan assures her she's fine. They embrace each other, hoping Halia learns her lesson. Mokran then confesses that the outfit he prepared for her was quite heavy for her, but she says he was right about her avoiding consummating their marriage. This shocks Ethan, and he asks why. Mokran confesses that she doesn't mind the embraces and kisses, but anything beyond that makes her feel strange all over. Ethan smiles and asks if he can kiss her now. She nods shyly, and he does. They then embrace each other, and all Mokran could see and feel was him. The next morning, Mokran wakes up to find Ethan sleeping. She remembers what happened last night and blushes. It's been 3 days now, and Mokran delivered a letter to Axel. She heads toward the tribespeople, who discuss the newlyweds' honeymoon phase. But Mokran hesitatingly admits that Ethan doesn't seem happy. All day long they all drank to discuss the issue. Ethan finds them collapsed. Even Mokran was drunk. She embraces Ethan, making him flustered. She starts taking her robe off, saying it's too hot, but Ethan asks her not to until they get home, making her pout. She then angrily asks why he doesn't seem satisfied with that night, making Ethan sigh. But Mokran was still angry, and bit Ethan on his torso, making him faint. His unconscious state sobers up Mokran, who then takes him to the village physician. The physician tells them that he has lost so much blood and asks if he has been taking his medicine. He denies it, saying he ran out of it. The doctor reminds him of his incurable illness, but Ethan hastily ends the conversation. However, Mokran has heard this and realizes why Ethan's been having all those nosebleeds. After the physician leaves, she asks him why he didn't tell her. Ethan realizes that she has misunderstood, but doesn't know how to explain. He tries to explain how he tends to feel overexcited as a newlywed and will be fine after meeting his master. Mokran agrees, asking him to take her with him. They soon get ready for the long 6-day journey. By sunset, her back ached from traveling on horseback. Ethan stops, saying they will set up camp for the night. Mokran stares at the beautiful view, and hopes for her people to see the world outside too. Ethan tells her how the place where his master lives has an amazing view too. Later, they reach the snowy land. Mokran shivers from the cold, but Ethan assures her they are almost there. Ethan turns to see Mokran but finds her covered with snow. He asks her to ride with him so it will be warmer. All of a sudden, an avalanche rushes in their direction. Ethan grabs a branch and asks Mokran to grab his hand. However, she fails to do so and gets swept away by the avalanche. Her vision starts to blur as she wonders if she will die. Later, a man finds a faint Mokran. Ethan soon regains consciousness and looks around for Mokran, but he spots her as he wanders in search of her. He finds her hat and scarf. He also finds Belza, making him realize where she must be. Meanwhile, Mokran wakes up to find herself in a warm house. She realizes she's naked and asks who he is. The man stares at her, making her uncomfortable. The man sniffs her, making Mokran close her eyes in fear. Something about the man didn't feel very human to her just then. Ethan enters, and when he sees them, he turns angry. He rushes to Mokran's side and asks the man to name himself, but the man stays quiet. Hence, Ethan draws out his sword. But just then Ethan's master throws water on both of them, calling him reckless and impatient. Later they all sit down to talk while the man scrubs the floor. It turns out that the man was just giving Mokran a change of clothes. The master explains that the man doesn't speak because he's a wild child who grew up with the animals in the mountains. The scene shifts to Ethan, suggesting that he show Mokran around while the master prepares his medicine. He explains to Mokran that this is where he trained for 4 years to become a strong man for her. Even though that good-for-nothing Leo tried getting rid of him, he always survived. Mokran wonders if his illness and quarrels with friends are all because of her. She is cut off from her thoughts as she finds the man working. She notices how he is even bigger than Ethan and wishes to be strong like him. Ethan notices her staring at the man. He turns her around and suggests going elsewhere to make snowmen. The master offers her a drink and asks if they should go on a walk for the day. Since Ethan asked her to stay inside, she hesitates. The master assures her that Ethan will understand, so she agrees. As they walk, Master asks Mokran who she thinks will win in a fight, him or Ethan. The question confuses her, and she remarks that no apprentice is stronger than his master. This shocks him, and he says he cannot be with Ethan. They soon reach an ice wall. The master remarks that he can't imagine what she's going through trying to fit into a foreign tribe, and how she must feel like a failure to become a contributing figure to the new tribe. He explains that what brings down this wall of ice in the end isn't brute force, but gentle sunlight. Mokran realizes that he's right. Even if she can't be a Gui Hayol, she has her own strengths. Soon it's night, and Ethan still hasn't returned. She wonders what's keeping them out so late and decides to go find him. Meanwhile, Ethan is trying his best to return since Mokran is waiting for him, but the man with him thinks otherwise. Suddenly, Ethan's body starts feeling heavy, and he spits out blood. His vision blurs, but he forces himself to return to her. As everything turns dark, he finds Mokran running toward him. It turns out he had ingested a lot of medicine and experienced this as a side effect. The master reveals that now he won't experience nosebleeds since he has developed poison immunity. The master leaves, leaving the room for them to talk. Ethan then explains why he was having nosebleeds. He then hugs Mokran, confessing that he's sorry for overprotecting her. Mokran kisses him, saying it's fine. She pushes him down, saying she isn't as delicate as he thinks she is. She then asks if she should show how tough she really is, making Ethan blush. The scene switches to Ethan and Mokran leaving. The master whispers something in Mokran's ear and bids them goodbye. They soon return to the village and find out that the inter-tribe competition is about to take place. Mokran suggests holding the tournament in Cho's village, and they all agree. Soon preparations were made, and they all headed to Cho's village. Ivan is terrified and wonders what is happening. Mokran rushes toward them happily and explains everything. Meanwhile, Ethan is confused as to why those man-eating fish didn't attack this time and decides to keep a close eye. That night, Ethan brings Mokran food, but finds Axel saying this wasn't the marriage Mokran wanted, and that she wasn't in love with him when she became his bride. Ethan is shocked and turns away when he hears Mokran agree. Soon fireworks take place, and Mokran goes outside. She finds the food and realizes Ethan must have eavesdropped on their conversation. She decides to find him and clear up the misunderstanding despite Axel's protests. Despite agreeing to sacrifice herself by marrying him, in the end, she married him because she loved him. As she leaves, Axel becomes furious. Meanwhile, Ethan is filled with guilt for forcing Mokran to give herself to the man she feared. He decides to atone for what he has done, no matter what. He expresses his desire to lay down his life for Axel for forcing himself on his sister. But Axel disagrees, and so Ethan challenges him instead. Mokran watches them and pleads to make them stop, but no one dares to step in. As she sees her brother wield his sword at Ethan, she screams, and just then, a terrifying sea creature dives out of the sea. As the creature starts attacking Mokran, Ethan saves her. He asks her to guide the villagers to a ship on the other side of the island. While they do what is best, Freya raises her spear and announces roast octopus for breakfast. As Axel and Mokran gather the villagers, Ethan fights with the octopus as Axel asks Mokran to hurry as they have to leave. She stares into the distance, knowing something isn't right. She explains to Axel that she can't leave Guy Heels all alone since they put their lives on the line for this island. She snatches a spear and rides toward Ethan, saying she is a gooey heel too. Meanwhile, Ethan realizes that stabbing the octopus doesn't work. Mokran arrives to see Ethan in trouble. She thinks of a possible solution. Ethan also doesn't want to let go, wanting Mokran to feel free from this forceful marriage and protect her dear island. He is cut off from his thoughts as he sees Mokran aiming to throw the spear at the monster. She remembers what Ethan thought of her and throws the spear toward him. Ethan catches it and stabs it once again. Thinking the monster is finally defeated, Ethan is taken aback as the octopus sprays out venom, causing him to collapse. Her eyes widen as she sees blood coming out of Ethan's mouth, and she sinks to the floor. She confesses to Ethan that he has taught her many things: the beauty of the sunsets, the cold touch of snow, how to laugh, how to grieve, and how to share her thoughts with different people. She promises not to trade her happy memories for the world, confessing that she loves him. Soon, Ethan sits up and asks if he really deserves her love. After forcing her, she shakes her head, saying she chose to be with him. Axel and Ivan are in shock as they realize Mokran's love for Ethan. The next day, Freya and Ivan cast their differences aside and promise to build a lasting bond for them all. The scene shifts to Axel smiling as he watches the changes between the tribes. His wife approaches him with their baby. He hopes their children will find themselves in a new and better world. On the other hand, Mokran has tied down Ethan as a punishment for giving into an honorable duel. Ethan promises not to do it again, and he knows he will since this was too cruel. Mokran confesses that she's been waiting for so long to properly confess her love, but he makes her say goodbye. She then loosens his ropes, and they embrace each other, confessing their love. A year later, Ivan and Axel go to Gui to meet Mokran. Ivan is now getting used to the fiery temperament of the tribe as he has now realized how great they are once one gets to know them. As Mokran leads them to her home, she says she has a surprise for them. Mokran then leads them to meet Freya. Freya says she is surprised to know Axel arranged this meeting, and she confesses how happy she is that her family is visiting them regularly. Ethan smiles, saying he's happy for her. She then whispers a surprise to him, making him flustered. He hugs her tightly, making Mokran remind him of the baby. He thanks her for being there on the island when they first met, and she smiles, saying it was her line. She then says she is thankful for the dashing invader. They chuckle, deciding to savor the moment as well as the moments ahead of them. With this, the manhwa ends.
Love the manhwa? Subscribe for more. Your support makes it all possible. Hit subscribe now!